So the opening is really nothing to talk about. It's transposition. c4, knight f6, knight f3, e6, g3, d5, g2, bishop e7, castle, castle, d4. Okay. So here, a couple of options. Black can take here right away, or play knight here followed by c6. And then you're going to develop the bishop by playing b6 and bishop to a6. Or bishop to b7, depending. So black opts for this approach. And there are a couple of ways white can play here. White can try knight e5, or knight a3. But after both, black can probably reach equality. So the best move here is most likely queen c2, which is played. So a6. And now you can play a4 here to stop b5, but really it's not a great move here because, one, you're weakening the square, and two, b5 actually weakens black's queen side slightly, so you don't want to really prevent a move that actually weakens black more than it helps black. So a4 is possible here, but it's not really too popular anymore. So you just take b5 with tempo to develop this bishop along this diagonal. So you bring your queen back to the natural square, and now bishop e7. Okay, so this is the starting position, basically, of one of the lines of the Catalan. So you guys try to tell me, what is white going to be trying to do? So, and what is black going to be trying to do? What's black's goals and what's white's goals? All right. You guys have hit on a lot of the major points. Yep. Actually, between all of you, you pretty much have covered all the major points. Give special commendation to Elfhater, to Goose, and to Railbird, who all hit on individual points that are very important and very accurate. So indeed, black is playing for c5, so point to Elfhater. And really, this is black's only plan. But if he can get it, he's assured equality, because he removes white's center, and he removes this weakness of a backward pawn. It's not technically backward. It's like semi-backward. Okay. So what white's trying to do is he's trying to get maybe a knight to this square. So exactly what Goose said, he's going to be trying to get this knight to that square. And the way he does it usually is here, here, and here. So point for Goose. Another thing white can do, is to take advantage of this b5 move with a well-timed a4. to kind of break up the queen side. Because obviously if pawn takes pawn leaves black with structural weaknesses on a6 and c7. And sometimes, you can either get a5 in and kind of cramp black, or take this pawn and use this a file to your advantage. Depending, if this rook goes to c8, you can infiltrate with like a rook a7 at some point. And then what Railbird said, focus on the c-pawn. So let me show that. So focus on the c-pawn by using your queen, using the rook on c1, and then maybe even using the bishop on f4. And how about a little more subtle one? What minor piece exchange would white like to achieve, and why? This is kind of a little bit more of a subtle one, but you'd be surprised how often it comes up. So what minor piece exchange does white want to achieve here? So it's actually not the dark square bishops, but it's the light square bishops. And the reason for that is because once this bishop is removed, the light squares on the queen side are going to become weak. In particular, this square on c6. So you can use the c6 square as a home for knight or queen, perhaps. So it is the light squared bishops. Yeah, I mean, dark squared bishops, I mean, it wouldn't really help you one way or the other to exchange them. Because, I mean, black's usually not playing bishop takes c5 anyway. And yeah, I mean, the knights, it's not like either set of knights are doing anything right now, so the key is to exchange light square bishops. But I mean, it's not something that you have to do right away, but it's just something that, to keep in mind that it's not really a bad thing necessarily to exchange those bishops, because the light squares on the queen side become weak, especially specifically c6 and b7. So all of these things will come into play in this game. You'll see. Okay, so given that we set out what the strategic plans are, so like I said, for black, he just wants to get in c5 by any means necessary, as long as it doesn't lose tactically or weaken something else. And white, like I said, has a variety of setups. So the question is, what should white play here? What should white play here? So usually in the opening, if you're not completely developed, you want to get completely developed. So the question is, what piece should you develop? Got a few options, right? You could develop this guy, you could develop this guy, you could develop this guy. So the question is, which piece to develop? And then when you answer that question, the next question is to what square? So the right answer to these questions is that you want to develop this bishop first. Okay, because this knight wants to come to d2 and to b3, right? Okay, that's not the right arrow, but it wants to come to d2 and to b3. And if you play knight d2 right away, then you're blocking this bishop in. So that's no bueno. So you want to move this bishop out. So the question is, where do you want to move this bishop? Where do you want to move this bishop? Elf-Hader's right. Bishop e3, knight g4. Bishop f4, bishop d6. I don't know about that. Okay, so yeah, you have options. So yeah, Elf-Hader's right. E3 is not the one. So we can cross that out. But okay. How many of you like d2? How many of you like f4? How many of you like g5? Well, the answer is they're all fine. So bishop d2 is actually a sophisticated idea. The point is you want to play this bishop to a5 and pin this pawn to stop c5. So it's kind of artificial, but it's reasonably effective. So it's not popular, but it's certainly a viable method of continuing. Okay, so after bishop f4, actually black's best move here is not knight d5 or bishop d6, but actually knight c6. And then after rook d1 to play rook c8, just to get this rook immediately on this pawn. Because the problem is, like if you play knight d5, for example, oops. So if you play knight d5 right away, for example, like I can get e4 in one move. So I can either play e4 right away, or I can play bishop d2 if I want to keep my bishop, which I don't really, but if I wanted to, I could. And then the point is, now the tempo I lost by playing bishop d2, you're going to lose when I play e4. So, and for the same reason, bishop d6, this bishop is actually one of my most useless pieces, so I don't really mind trading it. And it doesn't really help you to trade it, because your bishop is probably one of your better pieces. So even though you guys were kind of wrong in saying to trade these pieces, I mean, in actuality, this bishop won't mind trading for anything. It'll trade for this guy, it'll trade for this guy. So with that in mind, the actual move played and a reasonable move is bishop g5. So basically he's just intending to take this and get rid of this guy, because this bishop is not going to be very useful in this position. So bishop g5 was played. So not only does this piece help with the control of c5, because it can go like knight d7 or knight e4, but it also controls e4. So by changing this bishop for this knight, it also strengthens the control of both c5 and e4 indirectly. So if bishop e4 here, this is not a good move, because queen c1, queen c8, knight b2, tempo, bishop e7, and now the strong move e4, because now this knight can't move because of the pin. So this e4 now comes, and usually if you get e4 in without any repercussions, it's bad for black. So h6, then take, and queen c2. And now this square is firmly under white's control, this square is firmly under white's control, and white should be much better here. He has a development advantage as well. This knight's kind of out of play, this pawn is weak. So with a little trick, white managed to be better. So bishop e4 is not good here. It's a normal move in these positions normally, but here it's not particularly good. So instead of bishop e4, black just develops knight bd7. So what should white do here? What should white do here? Okay. So how many like knight d2, knight bd2, and how many like bishop takes f6? Because I saw most of you suggest knight bd2, but then I saw Yaran suggest bishop takes f6. So which one do you guys like more, this one or this one?